Hey there, independent Scientologists. Discover a new perspective to your bridge by visiting ao-gp.org. Get in session with remote auditing using the Theta Meter. Are you curious about where you stand? Head on over to ao-gp.org now and take our free personality test. Join the growing group of independent Scientologists today.
Hi, and welcome to another AOGP Scientology Outside of the Church podcast, brought to you by the Advanced Org of the Great Plains, and soon to be another URL. We're changing our name. More on that later. So today's podcast, season 9, episode 15, Duplication. Mr. Smith. Duplication. What about duplication? Well, Ellerate says in Dianetics 55 that a person can survive to the degree that they can duplicate. What is duplication, Arthur, in the dictionary?
Okay, I'm looking it up now. Let's see, is it in? Okay, duplication. Number 1, cause, distance, effect with the same thing at effect as is at cause.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, number 2, the flow of creation. Duplication is the process by which a thing persists. So it's spelled Dupucation. So duplication is the process by which a thing persists.
So we were watching a TikTok video last night with Piers Morgan and a biology PhD, weren't we?
Mm-hmm.
And Piers Morgan could not, you know who he is, right, Arthur?
I love Piers Morgan.
Yeah.
That guy is like the master of bull baiting.
Yeah,
He's a machine.
yeah. Yes, he's decidedly very British in his snarky British way.
Oh my God.
Just
yes.
gosh. And he was talking to this biologist about physics of all things, and he was trying to bull bait the biologist about the Big Bang Theory and how there couldn't be any time before the Big Bang. And he just couldn't wrap his mind around it. And I was like, this guy just does not duplicate what this biologist was saying. And the biologist was saying the same thing he was, is that, look, I know it's hard for you to understand, and this high-end physics is hard to understand, which is duplication. He couldn't duplicate that there was no time before physics says the Big Bang, before the physical universe manifested. And I thought, wow, that's really an interesting concept, that here you have on a worldwide news show them talking about that they can't duplicate the concept of there being no time before the Big Bang. And I thought, that's really something. Here you have a professor in biology, he's a PhD, and he's saying, I don't really understand it either. And what was the end result of it? I stepped out of the room.
He pretty much he kept telling Pierce, he's like, you know what, if we were physicists, we'd be able to understand it, but we're not. I'm a biologist. Pierce Morgan is whatever Pierce Morgan is, a bull baiter.
Yeah.
a judge, whatever.
A merchant of chaos, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The end result was that Pierce was arguing that surely because this is impossible, then there must be a God, that created all of this. And the biologist basically just shut him down and said something, I can't remember the exact words, but I thought it was very funny. But he was like, just because we can't wrap our heads around the fact that there was no time before the Big Bang doesn't mean that there has to be a invisible sky daddy that created everything. And he literally said Sky Daddy, and I thought it was the funniest thing ever.
Yeah. So,
all right.
you
So
see
what's the
how that
difference?
goes?
So what's the difference then between, say, duplication and computation?
Well, I think computation follows when there is a lack of duplication, because as LRH says, you have to dub something in if you have no information. And that was one of the directions that I was going to go in this. So thank you for bringing that up. Is because that's what humans do. Is when there's a lack of duplication or no information, it's what LRH calls dub in. You're putting something there because you need to have something there as a stable datum or stable piece of information. So with no duplication comes, well, I mean, just look at this planet. Outside of the system, the planet itself, the life, the geology, the biology, the circle of life, and all that stuff, then you have us.
Yeah.
And and then you get somebody like LRH, who comes up with the Scientology Dianetic axioms in the early 50s and explains all this stuff long before the Hadron Collider. He was asking questions and giving answers, much like Einstein was in the 30s and 40s. But nobody's talking about this on Piers Morgan, with Piers Morgan, or anything like that. And I thought, wow, there is such a lack of duplication of the universe around us, where people don't duplicate. So when you don't have any duplication, you put something there, like when they say, for example, well, what happens when mass goes in a black hole? And they say, well, this is what happens. Well, there they are. They're creating something to put in there because they don't know. It's just supposition, but it's treated as fact. That's where dub-in comes in, and this is where we get into trouble. Now, this is how we have a lot of the religions that we have, and some would argue that is not the case. But I am positing, just and people maybe even be offended by saying, me saying that. But the thing is they're filling the void because they're trying to answer the riddles of life and existence. Well, in Piers Morgan's case, he says that's why he believes in religion, because he has to have something there to explain everything that he can't explain. That's a lack of duplication. And then you get something like Dianetics and Scientology that explains it, and it's thrown into the dustbin because, well, he was a science fiction writer.
Yeah.
But other writers, George Orwell, I mean, we could go on and on and on. Guys like that, they write these novels and they go down in history, as one of the most important, Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury, Robert Heinlein, Isaac Asimov, the three laws of robotics, things like that. They're taking this information and they're using Asimov's information in programming robots with AI. Why aren't they doing that with LRH's stuff? I mean, I know the answer, and I think probably a lot of people do as well. But there's a lack of duplication there, because why, if you had information, there's either two reasons: you don't understand it, or you don't want to understand it. Wouldn't you guys agree?
I'm just quickly looking up.
Yes. Okay. So,
am I getting duplicated
in the
here?
tech dictionary. So, in the tech dictionary, we have duplication, which I already did. But then after that, we've got duplicative question.
Yeah,
duplicative question. Is that right?
Yeah, that's different.
Well, because I mean, just looking at the definition of it, teach a student to duplicate without variation,
right,
to an auditing
TR3,
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, each time newly in its own unit of time, not as a blur with other questions, and to acknowledge it. So it's still quite relative to what you're saying, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and that is why we have repetitive processes, is because
Mm,
you're trained to ask a repetitive process in a new unit of time again and again and again, because each time you're asking it, it should be as if you've never asked the question before to get the person to answer the question in a new unit of time. But, we go to the trouble to clear the definitions of the words in the command. What does this command mean to you? To make sure that the PC is duplicating the question. But herein lies the rub, is that if the question is a reading question on an auditing process, when the PC duplicates the command, at the time that you ask them the question and the question reads, which means there's charge on the meter, charge in the reactive mind, there's something there to audit. Even though the person has said, yes, I understand the question, that doesn't mean they duplicated the question. Parentheses,
mm,
yet. Because you ask the duplicative question over and over and over until they have a realization of floating needle and very good indicators.
mm,
So what that means is what it meant to him in the beginning when you started auditing him on it, and when you ask the last iteration of the question, it means something totally different. Isn't that interesting?
it is interesting.
So when you ask
Mm,
somebody a question that's a reading question, they're not duplicating what it is that you're really asking until the end. And you might ask it 50, 100 times in some cases or more.
sure.
So their duplication isn't there. And what you're trying to do, let's say, for example, it's objectives processes, which are auditing processes that occur in the physical universe. Look at that wall. Thank you. Walk over that wall. Thank you. Touch that wall. Thank you. Turn around. Look at that wall. You can do that for hours with people. And then they're like, yeah, I can do that. Okay, let's do it. And then they say, oh my God, I just realized there's a wall there.
Mm, mm,
This shows you that a person's duplication at the bottom of the bridge is entirely different than their duplication at the middle of the bridge or next week or at the end of the bridge, because
mm, mm.
they're duplicating, they're not duplicating what's really there, what's really going on. Did you find what you were looking for?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay.
So this is from the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. This is David Hinton's
Interpretation.
translation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I actually prefer the Stephen Mitchell one, but I think my nephew has that one. So this will have to do. When the great way is abandoned, we're faced with humanity and duty. When clever wisdom appears, we're faced with duplicity. When familial harmony ends, we're faced with obedience and kindness. And when chaos engulfs the nation, we're faced with trustworthy ministers. And I think basically what he's trying to say over there is that when you take away knowingness, right, which is quote unquote the way, then you have to resort to sublimations of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you get into moral codes and,
Mm-hmm.
ethics and all of that stuff. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, instead of just like having that knowingness, whether it's, you can call it intuition, I guess, you're substituting it for a lesser form. And that's when you get all these other things. And it's interesting that he used the word
Mm.
duplicity there.
Mm-hmm.
In it. I actually wasn't even looking for that, but
There was.
yeah. And you know what? I was just looking at the word serendipity today, and I think this is quite
Yeah,
funny.
that's how serendipitous.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
was because the thing you sent me, the link you sent me. I thought that's what we were doing the podcast on today.
Oh, you mean on science?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that was another one that I wanted to float for a podcast. But um so the point is that a person's duplication, a person's awareness, a person's tone level, because tone level is a degree of ARC, because ARC equals understanding. A person's duplication is to the degree that they are in present time, even though time is a lie. More on that later. per the
If they're
Scientology
in
axioms.
present time, they're technically not being future or past, so they're perfectly where they should be.
Well,
Is there time in
Mm.
present time? You know.
well, you know, it's not like somebody saying, "What's the score?" You know, they're looking up from their phone, and the basketball teams made 2 baskets. They're not in present time. The score, you know, you're at any moment, what's the score is now, okay, the score has changed. Okay, the sun has moved in the sky a little bit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So being in present time is, okay, I am aware of the fact that for time being a lie, I'm in agreement with that. Isn't that? I think that's really interesting. And your duplication is, I'm up with the current lie.
Mm.
If you want to get technical about it, I'm on the same page. When somebody says, "Okay, what happened?" They went to make some popcorn. They came back. What happened in the show? You didn't pause the show. I asked, "What happened?" Bring me up to speed. So duplication is something that you're duplicating whatever you agree to. It's an agreement to duplicate. You have to agree. Wouldn't you guys
Agree.
agree?
Yeah.
See?
Yep. Yep.
So,
Well, I'm looking at this word duplicity. Dishonest talk or behavior, especially by saying different things to two people.
which we were talking about before the
Um,
podcast.
Yep. Contradictory, doubleness of thought, speech, or action.
Right.
The simplicity and openness of their lives brought out for him the duplicity that lay at the bottom of ours. Mary Austin.
It's two reality.
Interesting.
And I say this with a quote around it. It's 2 realities, quotes around realities. Because per the Scientology axioms, well, excuse me, the Dianetic axioms, there's 3 universes. Yours, mine, and the agreed upon universe. So, in order to duplicate somebody, you can fall prey to duplicity.
Another one, yeah, it says the state of being double. So
Right. So when you find out that
So
something
you
isn't
present yourself.
Yeah.
So you'd present yourself one way,
Mm-hmm.
but then you're really something else. You know,
Right.
kind of like a wolf in sheepskin's clothing, for example.
Right.
well, that would,
A double agent.
yeah. I mean, when I just look at this is just on Google basically. Deceitfulness is 1, and the state of being double is 2. So it's quite funny to me because the first one it would be a alter is or not is, but the fact of being double,
It's an alter. It's an alter is on top of an alter
Yeah.
is on top of an alter is.
Hold on. No, that's if it's duplicated, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm just slow
No,
today
it's
or
okay.
something. But
This is unfolding, and this is why we're doing a podcast on it, because it is a multi-layered
so
thing.
a perfect duplicate obviously can't exist because then it would cancel out each other
As is and no longer
right.
exist.
So then in this sense, a duplicate could be, well, I guess it has to be an alter is, hey, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Could it just be an acknowledgement?
Well, and see, this is why he wrote Dianetics 55 in the chapter on communication that's on the professional TR's course, is because when you're duplicating somebody, you're duplicating what is an isness for them, but may not be the true isness.
Well, it won't be the true isness because perfect duplicate can't exist.
Precisely.
So could that be also, say,
interesting?
dropping your tone? So could that also be dropping your tone
Thank you.
to work with someone at a lower tone, and then from there, so you're duplicating their behavior, creating an acknowledgement, and then from there, once you've got some kind of ARC, from there, then you can start moving up or down, depending on your situation.
The higher tone, LRH says in Science of Survival, the higher tone level selectively gives to the lower tone level. So you have, in so doing, if your tone level is higher, your ARC with the universe around you is more accurate. And you have to go, I'm going to descend down the tone scale and agree to become aberrated and say, I don't know as much, I am not aware of as much, in order to be in the form of ARC at a lower tone level. So you lessen your duplication, you go into agreement, you agree to become aberrated, and down the slippery slope you go. And this is why you see so many OTs that drop off the face of the earth when they go OT7 or OT8, because they don't have anybody, like on Facebook, I'm using as an example. They just disappear because they're much higher toned than Facebook, and they just get off it. I've seen it time and time and time and time again, myself included. So as an example,
interesting.
That's them selectively, you know.
Yeah, you're opting out and saying I unsubscribe.
Because I mean, you like when I mean, okay, so I had this friend, and I've just recently decided, you know what, it probably isn't a healthy friendship for me. So I guess in that way it could be the same. Because you know, you are who your friends are, so they say. I guess that's
Right.
where the
So
pain comes from.
let me and this, and Arthur, feel free to jump in at any point on this.
Mhm.
So what you're telling me is you don't feel duplicated.
Oh, absolutely. My goals are not duplicated. Where I want to go in life, what I want to achieve. You know, this person is a functioning alcoholic, but alcoholic being the big word, pretty much. So you know, and I
And what does alcohol do to a person's duplication?
oh well, yeah, that's true. That's a whole other sideline, really.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Brings them down the tone scale.
absolutely. And you know, whenever you try and have conversations with them, their duplication just isn't quite there.
Right.
And so then you've got to compensate and stuff. I mean, this is a lot like the thing with Michelle as well. Whoops.
Yeah, from the last
Just
podcast.
bleep out the name or something, but like it was that person who attacked me. Like her duplication was,
She was seeing something completely different than what was going on.
exactly.
Right. And so
that was very dangerous.
that's a misduplication because they're out of present time. A equals A equals A.
She was out of present everything.
Right. So the duplication has to be there in order for a person to be in communication, to be in affinity, to be in reality. Because
so you're saying duplication equals ARC, pretty much?
Yeah, duplication and understanding, pretty much the same thing. But if I say to you, red ball, and you think red ball, you've duplicated a red ball in your mind. You've mocked up a red ball.
Do you know what I find so fascinating? And I know, I think this, I think I read in something that LRH had with the whole blackness, where people don't see pictures.
Blackness of Caves.
Yeah. I find that so interesting.
Right. It is literally a no duplication of anything. It is I don't want any part of this. You see that. I audited a guy on that where he couldn't see pictures at all. He had significances, but he couldn't see pictures.
Wow.
On book one.
There's also those people that don't have, and I think these people are sort of in line with this, where they don't hear words in their head.
Well, right, and that was that was the big picture is you look at our society and how they misduplicate pretty much everything.
Like, how do they think? If they have no pictures, then they have no words. They have no. I mean, that's mass insignificance. What's in there?
Exactly.
I mean, I'm not being critical. I would love to understand how their mind actually works. Do they just think in concepts?
Right. Well, I've had
different duplications.
Yeah, I've had another PC that said that they don't see pictures.
Yeah.
They didn't say that it was black, but they don't see pictures.
Mm.
And I said, and I just pulled the string on it, and sure enough, they saw pictures, but they hadn't duplicated. They were seeing pictures.
Wow.
Yeah, interesting.
Do you
Interesting.
see how there was no duplication? That was a picture, a mental image picture.
Wow. Yeah.
So if those two cases are possible, anything else is possible.
Yeah.
So this is why duplication is such an interesting subject is because, well, like with the chart of human ability, which is an extension of the tone scale, you see where you say one thing and the person gets a completely different thing because they're at a different tone level. They're interpreting your communication as something else.
Hmm.
So it can be very frightening, or it can
Reality is relative.
reality is relative to the tone level you reside in, and
Yeah.
that is your degree of ARC. And this is where we get into trouble because we use our news sources and we go, I forget who it was I was talking to the other day, that when they look at the news media and everything, you're just supposed to take it for granted. Well, look at the tone level of how it's being presented to you, that the information was
Mm.
true, is what they were saying. And they said they realized that the information was not true. And I said, exactly. Consider the source, which is what LR8 says on the data series, of reliable source. Remember that from your course?
Mm-hmm.
So reliable source is important because reliable source is what's the tone level of the emanation point of the information you just received.
Mm.
And if you can't spot that, you might want to back up until you can.
I mean, look at now. Okay, I might be totally narrow-minded and naive, whatever. But when I think of COVID, for example, the mass hysteria
Mm-hmm.
that the news just,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Arthur shaking his head.
like it was.
There was a lot of duplication there.
Yeah, and here's the thing.
Of what though?
I do not know.
Whoa, yeah, a wisp.
I don't know one person in my life who passed away from COVID.
Right. Well, I remember we were watching that stand-up comedian, and he brought
It's
up
always a
brought up
friend of a
COVID, and
friend,
the
or
gal said, I had a relative who died, and he was all
yeah.
embarrassed and all that stuff. I mean, you
I'm not saying there weren't deaths.
right,
I'm just saying it was hyped up.
right, right. But see, the thing is remember we were talking about the three universes: yours, mine, and the agreed upon universe. So misduplication, if it's put out there, a lie. Misduplication is because then you go back to Goebbels, the Nazi, who said if you repeat a lie often enough, people will believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can
Mm.
purposely misduplicate something, and people go, "Did you hear that?" And then the next thing you know, there's a lockdown
Yeah.
type of a thing, and that is something that that is the biggest mistake anybody makes. When we've talked about, you need to be careful of the company you keep. You need to know their tone level. Well, the company you keep and the sources of your information as or more important than the company you keep, because this is how people get controlled in the society.
Yeah.
Based off of misduplicated information, or hyped or altered, or so on and so forth.
And I also just want to add real quick that it's not even necessarily just about the physical real stuff.
Sure.
It is so important for people to duplicate the fact that it's much more than just that. What you believe 10 to 1 will happen. So
Well,
if
and
you
that was where I
believe
was
you
headed.
can be sick, you
That was
will.
where I was
I
headed.
didn't buy into it at all. And I've been fine.
Right.
Better than fine.
Right. Well, I think we mentioned, Arthur, you look like you were
Ruminating.
I
ruminating
have
on.
to admit, I'm actually really struggling with this topic.
Oh yeah.
I've got, which is really interesting because I'm trying to work out in my mind this whole duplicate thing, and so I'm looking, like, while you guys are talking, I'm looking online as well, and from what I'm understanding so far, so a lie can be duplicated, truth
Mm-hmm.
can be duplicated, And just looking at the synonyms here, clone, copy,
Mm-hmm.
imitate, mirror,
Mm-hmm.
replicate, reproduce, strong matches.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I've got a real weird block around this one. Hey,
Well, the interesting thing that I was the direction that I was heading in on this is when you're dealing with creative beings such as Thetans, and you get billions of people to misduplicate something, okay? Then, like Ellerate says, the only way you can control a person is to lie to them. But the extension of that is far more insidious because a Thetan can be and can create anything. And so if you get billions of people leaning in the same direction,
yeah,
guess what? You have the agreed
you've got
upon
COVID.
reality, and you have got a deadly disease out there, and it becomes factual.
So Arthur, did you mean, sorry,
Yes.
Oh, that's okay. I was done.
did you mean that you don't quite understand? You're not duplicating duplication.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm getting there. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm starting to grasp what's going on here.
In short,
And it's funny because like it's a really simple word in many ways.
It is.
And so
Almost too
I'm
simple.
curious to see why, and I think that's my struggle with it. Interestingly,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Right. I'll give you an example, and we've talked about this in another podcast. Is that when 9/11 happened, the random number generator, I believe it was at Oxford. I could be wrong. Feel free to correct me in the comments on YouTube. The random number generator went a little nuts and changed the way that it was generating numbers because there was an awareness that occurred at the moment that the planes hit the towers. True story. And the Half Past Human website has these robots that crawl the net, much like Google's do to find websites and how they've changed and everything. And they find the common words, whatever the quote unquote group agreement psyche is, they can predict what's going to happen. But the thing is it's a chicken or the egg thing, is you have a huge multi-billion number of Thetans that if you get them all on the same page, they're going to create a reality that would not have been created otherwise. And so you have the stream of consciousness, you have the physical universe and what's going on in it. But a Thetan monitors that physical universe. And you can go down one timeline or you can go down another, but you can modify it by getting enough group agreement to say that this is the case and it will happen. Talk
If you
about
duplicate it enough,
that's
then
right.
it becomes the truth.
That's right. That's right. And you know, all of these things about the Mandela effect and all of this stuff. If I were a betting man, which I am, I would put money on the fact that the only thing altering the stream of consciousness is the people that have the stream of consciousness in the first place. Think about that one for a minute. Sinbad was in a movie where he played Sinbad. I mean, you know, the whole thing with Mandela in the first place, and I don't know, that was the thing that started it. I don't remember what about Nelson Mandela that it was, but it was something about Nelson Mandela, and you know, I mean, all these things were.
Wasn't it to do with his death or the way he died?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
right. But it's go ahead.
No.
Well, the misduplication becomes the reality because people are being told a misduplication. So misduplication begets another misduplication, which then becomes reality.
I think duplication just basically comes down to objective versus subjective reality.
Absolutely, but if it's subjective, that's where it gets dangerous.
Yeah,
and this is why Hubbard says, look, the reason why we're in this mess in the first place is earlier civilizations where they implanted people with whatever it was that they wanted them to believe. But ultimately, it wasn't what they wanted them to believe that aberrated them. It was the fact that they were resisting being pushed off of a point, and what their opinion was. And that's my point, is that a Thetan knows And the reason why these things get so easily misduplicated is because billions of people are being pushed off of a point that they know is really the truth.
Do you know what's both fascinating and very scary? Is that nothing can be 100% duplicated. So technically, over all this time that we've been here, it's basically been broken telephone.
Yes.
I mean,
that's why we're doing the podcast.
Yeah,
exactly.
What tastes like coffee to me might not taste like coffee to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all some of us like 3 sugars, some like no sugars, some like milk, all that kind of thing. And that's on the, just obviously the most basic level without complicating it. And then you get, other things. And I think maybe the only thing that comes close to understanding reality, but even then, maybe not entirely, because there are no absolutes, is things like mathematics and science. Because then you're taking away all your feelings and perceptions of things and just looking at, okay, how can you duplicate that? 1 + 1 = 2, always.
To a degree.
But then that's also an absolute, though.
Right. Well, exactly. And Hubbard has a lot to say about, Earth mathematics and it being base 10 because we have 10 fingers and 10 toes, when that's not really the case. Not that we don't have 10 fingers and 10 toes, but basing it off of that.
Math harder for me.
Right. Well, the thing is if absolutes are unobtainable, there's no such thing as zero.
Right. Well, isn't that why you have -1, -2, -3, etc.?
Well, that's the point.
And I'm gonna struggle to keep up here. I'm just
that's the point. Is absolutes are unobtainable, so there's no such thing as zero. So why is zero a number?
Right.
Okay.
And
well, it's just a gauge.
Then that means essentially nothing is something.
Right.
It's a fucking paradox.
Right. 0 to 9 is 10. Get it? 0 to 9.
Well,
is 10.
how many numbers can you fit between 0 and 1?
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna go sleep now.
Right.
Too much randomity puts a person to sleep.
Go ahead, Arthur.
So how does one know then, right, before they choose to duplicate something, that what they're duplicating is the truth?
They don't.
Or authentic or the real thing?
Well, and therein lies reliable source. How are you going to go research this? And do you know that particular source is accurate? I mean,
no, he's asking, how do you know? Because even if you do research, I mean, look, let's take a Matterhorn.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Matterhorns are 100% convinced that what they know and what they observe is entirely true. I've seen people kill themselves on diets because of the fact that they thought that they knew the right thing.
Right.
As one example.
Well, death is pretty persistent.
And this is why I say you can't know.
So for anything to lie, it tends to persist.
Right. I think, well, I get that, but I think the closest you can come with it is probably Scientology, because we're starting to know, right?
Right. Well, and the point is, would war, famine, homelessness, pain, unconsciousness, and so on and so on and so on be an issue if we really had duplication and we had the accurate answers? I think not.
Yeah. No, because
it's funny.
Go ahead, Arthur.
Just a little sidestep. I remember when I read Hitler's book, he believed that disease was spread by the mind and not by genes. And so if a family had an illness within it, it wasn't because of genes or genetics. It was literally because of the environment that spread that disease.
Well,
and I thought that was really
interesting.
interesting.
Studies against that.
What is the environment? Because LRH says that part of the reason why life persists is because of the virus in the cell. It's a problem that poses a solution that poses a problem, which proposes another problem, because that's how you get, well, the survival of the fittest and a working a way around and all of that stuff is because without it, you have no forward progression because there is nothing to strive for. And so he wasn't terribly off the mark on that. Hitler wasn't terribly off the mark on that, but what is, your surroundings, I guess, is what you have to ask.
Basically, it's
Well-
kind of like what LRH says, that PTSness, if you're sick, you're PTS, hence environment.
Right.
That's right. Because
Right.
an idea can change your genetics, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like so if we're moving up and down the tone scale, right? Like let's say I'm right at the top of the tone scale,
Mhm.
then of course my body's going to match that as well. It's a combination soup between
Right.
my mind and my body, isn't it?
That's
So
right. You're
therefore my
far
body
more
will
in
function
harmony.
a lot better.
Right.
Yeah. And
Considerations
that's
essential
literally
to the
just
physical
by
universe.
That's right.
yeah.
That's absolutely right, because you're more in ARC, and that's why it's called the no to mystery scale. It is a Matterhorn on our OCA, our personality test, really at no? No, they are at on the curious, desired, enforced, inhibited, no, and refused CDEI scale. Where are they at? They're at enforced at best. They're at an enforced reality. They aren't at reality. That's why it persists.
It would actually be really interesting to see if studies were done on people who were adopted and didn't grow up in that environment. You know, that like, for example, well, I mean, they do ask, what's your medical history and stuff, right? Or your genetic history, like if your parents had cancer or whatever in certain forms and stuff.
Which gets
and
duplicated, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
gets duplicated.
Just the idea of that, just hearing it becomes a sorry to cut you off, Lisa, but
it's
it
okay.
becomes a duplication as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I take my dad. He was around my grandfather less than 2 years and ended up being a lot like his father. Didn't I mean, wasn't there a long time, but he ended up being a lot like his father in personality and everything. And I'm not dissing him. I'm just an observation. And
So it's postulates based.
well, the Thetan knows time, distance, space don't have anything to do with it. It's what the Thetan knows and what they want to duplicate, because they think, parentheses, quotes, whatever around it, they think that's survival. So that's their duplication at the time.
Because survival is remaining in ARC.
That's right, because out ARC is contra survival. Whatever the ARC is, whatever the tone level is, same thing. And so there you go. So if you were to say, what is the tone level of the physical universe? If I were to ask you guys, Arthur, what's the tone level of the physical universe? First blush, blurt it out.
0.
And what is 0, Lisa? Look at the tone scale.
Body death.
And what's at where is being objects? Where is being objects? Way down there on the right.
Yeah, it's minus 10.0.
Minus 10. So if it's the physical universe, somewhere in the neighborhood of 0 to minus 10, not a very good tone level to occupy. But this is what we do when people like Piers, and this is coming full circle. Sorry, Piers. This is where people who identify themselves as bodies, because if you look at that, at the tone scale there, you got objectifying bodies. I'm paraphrasing, being bodies, controlling bodies, all of that stuff. Piers Morgan cannot imagine brain. He kept mentioning the brain. My brain tells me, and he's using this via over and over and over. So he's being the physical universe. He's being an object. He's in agreement with the physical universe. If I can't see it, it doesn't exist, type of a thing. So that is a misduplication. When you go into agreement with the physical universe and you go, oh, I'm a body. Okay. Now where are things going to go from there? And hilarity ensues.
I mean,
and then in his position, that gets duplicated to millions of people.
Exactly. And then therein lies the rub. It gets passed on and passed on and passed on and passed on and passed on. Somebody
Yep.
like Hubbard
And
comes
then you're
around
either
and they go,
left or right or
right. Hubbard comes
yeah.
around and everybody says, ha ha ha, look at him. Ha, science fiction writer. Ha, he's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And well, okay. So it's so like, what's his name? Dr. Phil. How's that working out for you? How's that working out for you? Are things getting any better? What was it? The Sky Daddy?
Yeah.
The Sky Daddy taking care
Yeah,
of
yeah,
things
yeah.
for you?
Yeah.
God works in mysterious ways. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. You work in mysterious ways, and you're lying to yourself because you have, wait for it, misduplicated.
Mm.
And you can't blame people for that. But the thing is that with auditing, you're getting them to re-inspect things that they've just decided, case closed, done and dusted, over. And they go,
So
oh,
then you're
wait,
not duplicating what you thought.
that's right. And you're looking at it objectively. The auditor isn't evaluating, the auditor isn't invalidating, and you're looking outside of it and saying, I see a box. Okay, what does the box look like? I see a box. Thank you. What does the box look like? I see a box. Thank you. What does the box look like? I see a black box. Ah, okay. Thank you. And you keep doing this. And then they start going, you know what? There's no box there at all. I put that box there.
I want to introduce something
Mm.
interesting into the chat.
Sure. I could feel it emanating off. It was like, here it comes.
So, okay, we've been talking a lot about duplication and stuff like that. And then you said box, and that got me thinking about Schrodinger's cat.
Right. Which we dealt a lot with a couple of weeks ago when we were watching
Dark Matter.
Dark Matter.
So, like, okay, where does duplication come in that? Because basically, he's saying the cat
He's dead and alive both at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a matter of consideration.
Okay. But
or is it?
That's the thing, though, because you're basically saying subjective and objective reality is the same thing, whereas this whole podcast is basically saying they're very much not.
Mm-hmm.
Reality is relative, and that's kind of the principle of Schrodinger's cat. Really, is that it's relative, but relative to the individual, or relative to objective reality.
3 universes: yours, mine, and the agreed upon universe.
Okay.
Arthur, jump in anytime.
Well, there's an element of observation there as well, isn't it? Because you see what you believe, and then we've duplicated words to express what we see, like a tree, for example. Whereas if you remove that word and then you look at the being that comes out of the ground, see, even me describing it has said too much, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Just by saying a being coming out of the ground.
Right, but you see where evaluation and invalidation come in, because your considerations become the considerations of somebody else, and that's where where agreement or disagreement resides. Your universe, my universe, and the agreed upon universe. Is the cat dead or is the cat alive?
Yeah.
This is such a
hence the auditor's
concept.
code as well.
Right.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And that's why the auditor's code is important, because go ahead.
I was just going to say, because, okay, so obviously absolutes are unobtainable, which would then mean that the theory of multiverses and multiple realities existing is probable,
which physicists have said.
They've theorized.
Well, they've said they've theorized that they see that, but they've also had spooky physics where they've taken I believe it was a proton, don't quote me on that, and basically cut it in half, and they changed its spin and sent the other half out into space, and then verified that the other one spun in that direction as well, but they were separated.
So then is it okay? So then is it fair to say that the guy who says my life is fucked and the other guy who says my life is absolutely wonderful, both of them are right?
right? Because it's a matter of consideration. And if it's a matter
Yep.
of
So you're
consideration,
Schrodinger's cat
right,
in
So
that
then-
situation.
right.
So then what is wrong? What is wrongness then?
Wrongness is what you perceive wrongness to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then
Same with good. Same with evil.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the problem then not be an issue of duplication, but rather an issue of trying to enforce duplication on somebody else?
Right. Because what is survival? Survival is persistence. What is persistence? Persistence is an alter is.
Okay, but
So-
you get what I'm saying though. I'm
Yes,
I'm
I do.
basically saying that you living your life as
Mhm.
as you want. You're right. Me living my life as best as I want, I'm right.
Mhm.
And the problem comes in is where we try to change things. That is the problem, not the fact that change needs to be made, because your reality is relative and so is mine.
Palestinians want to live the way Palestinians do. Israelis want to live the way Israelis do.
Yeah.
But
Interesting.
there's a
isn't
problem there.
it? There's a problem
Yeah.
there because there is
Yep.
a lack of duplication.
Yeah, but it's
So
but what I'm saying is, sorry, Arthur, just real
that's all
quick.
right.
What I'm saying is that again, duplication isn't the issue. It's the desire to duplicate and
Well, it is there's no desire. There's no desire there by the Israelis to duplicate
but they want
Muslims.
Muslims to duplicate them.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
the desire is there. So you eradicate the desire and everybody lives
Right.
a happy life.
Right, but the desire is a 0 or a 1.
No, but this is the thing, though. We're creating those zeros and ones because of judgment. And that's where desire comes in. Because you can't have something good, like I said in a previous podcast, without having something bad.
Right.
So, for example, just real quick, we have 9 cats. And my favorite cat is a little black girl. We call her Sephi, short for Persephone. But she's my absolute favorite. And I think the reason why is because black cats have this stigma about them, that they're evil, that they're bad or whatever, you know? And so going in to adopting this cat, I had accepted inadvertently, I didn't know that I was doing it, but I had accepted all of her flaws already. And because there wasn't a desire to change her, that you know, that judgment wasn't there. She's just like, she can do no wrong in my eyes kind of a thing. Like, I hope I'm making sense, because once that fundamental desire to change happens, that's where the problem comes in.
Well, the desire to change is agreement from one reality to another. Is that duplication has occurred? That, oh, I'm over there, I'd like to be over here. I've duplicated that over here is better than over there. Is it not? And I'm sorry, Arthur. I know Arthur wants to say
it's better
something.
to
right.
you, though.
Right. Okay. Go ahead, Arthur. You wanted to say. Give you a chance to
So
light a cigarette.
out of all of that, I'm going to assume that the opposite of duplication would be perspective, because really it's a matter of your perspective that gets in the way of duplication. So Schrodinger's cat, you know, unless you could see it and you know, it's only a matter of perspective whether the thing's dead or alive. They're all different considerations. So then even when you guys are talking about multiverses, you know, if we can think it, therefore it somehow exists. However, can we observe it to exist the way we think it?
Maybe not in a body, because the body is very limited within the bandwidth of which it can perceive with 54 perceptions. It's a very, very untalented receiver of information compared to, oh, I don't know. Look at dogs and cats and what they can see and hear, and that we can't, just as a comparison. Any body is limited.
Because even if we look at words,
Yeah.
you know, even if we look at words and we try and duplicate some of these words like good and evil, right, wrong, all those kinds of things, like ultimately those words don't really mean much. However, the perspective we put towards them and then duplicate our perception towards those words, and it could be, you know, our perception could be an emotional driving force towards these words. It doesn't necessarily mean it's observable, but it could just be a feeling, which
Yeah.
is observable to the
Reactivity.
individual.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
right.
what is greatness? LRH is what is greatness.
Mm.
Is really the viewpoint of you're just looking at it going, okay, they're trying to survive. I get it. I love them anyway. No matter whether they beheaded somebody, no matter whether they're Mahatma Gandhi, no matter whether they're whoever, good, bad, indifferent, they're all just trying to survive. And survival is persistence within the physical universe. But that's limited
So
in
then that would
scope.
make you. So then that would make you an observer,
That's
and
right.
Yeah.
just seeing, nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah.
No duplication, no perspectives, no validations, no invalidations. It's simply being there.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine a scenario where we we technically all have the same ability to duplicate. Okay, now sure, there's IQs and personalities and stuff like that, but excluding all of those things, we have this ability as thetans, as people who knew and then didn't know because of dropping down tone and whatever. But put you put us all in the same ship from different angles, I mean, obviously we're gonna have to drop tone, drop tone, drop tone. So I guess my question,
I'd
as
say that
as
happens.
as almost metaphysical, is when does it end? When can we reach a state where we just accept, there's just this acceptance of, okay, that person is enjoying his life as he is, because basically this is the problem. I mean, depressed people, they they probably feel like they should do something because there's all this guilt and pressure from
Yeah,
society, from other people, from parents, that they should be doing something with their lives. They should be doing this, should be doing that, but they're unique individuals where, do what makes them happy, but they can't because of the restrictions of other people. So it's it's pretty amazing to think that, well, it goes back to the two rules for happy living. Only cause things others can easily experience, be willing to experience anything.
Right. So are they depressed because they're not being duplicated?
They desire, that's the thing. They desire to either duplicate or have duplication.
That's
If
right.
the desire wasn't there,
Huh?
everything would be fine.
Right. But the desire is partially what depresses them. And
Yeah. The most unhappy people that I've ever met have people that have compared themselves to others. Just as one example.
yeah, right.
because they struggle to duplicate what they see.
Yes.
That's right.
And
That's
they
right.
think that they need to.
What is the greatest form of flattery? Duplication.
I mean, jealousy. Jealousy is another way. You want to be something that you're clearly not and never will be.
Right.
And society says, oh, you
Interesting.
have to be a size 0. You have to have, smooth legs, all of this stuff. Like,
Well, and that's what we were talking about is the perceived norms are the misduplications that you're buying into
yeah,
that make you unhappy.
yeah. So pretty much what we've been led to believe is that objective reality matters more than subjective reality.
That's
And
right.
Yeah.
And that's
completely
what Hubbard
doesn't.
was trying to get across is that, this is all an illusion.
Yeah.
There's more than meets the eye here, and it doesn't meet the eye, it meets the being. And if the being doesn't inspect it, well, then they're not able to duplicate. And that is why auditing helps a being inspect things subjectively and then perceive the objective subjectively, not objectively to objective, subjectively to objective, because the objective doesn't exist without subjectivity.
Because when you're trying, when you have the desire to duplicate, guess what? You're at effect.
That's right.
Whereas cause, you're simply, existing as your own creation.
That's right. That's right.
Very interesting.
Okay.
Hardy?
The basic difference between objective and subjective information is that objective information is based on facts, while subjective information or a subjective perspective is based on opinion, emotion, or feelings.
See, even that,
Well,
it
LRH's
completely
definitions are different.
it completely minimizes the subjective reality to like just like or how you feel or what you think and stuff. But and then like reality is objective reality is the facts. This is how things should be. So there's a little bit of, in my opinion, there's a little bit of manipulation in that.
By whom?
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
the
even
folk
now,
made the
like how much
dictionary.
emphasis. Well, but but it could be one of those things where it's been the way it's distorted as well. Like since word clearing, like my God, how many words were you using thinking they were a certain way or they meant something until you realize what they actually meant, and then you're like, oh, holy crap, I've
Right.
been lying to myself for the last 40 years
Yeah.
This is
without
why
even knowing it.
this is why words read on an e-meter, is because if it reads,
Mm,
there's a lie behind it, and the Thetan knows. Which I wanted to do a podcast on how inexplicable it is that a Thetan knows, even though they don't know they know, but they know, and the meter
yep,
reads on
yep.
times, places, locations, you name it. The Thetan knows,
Mm,
and the Thetan knows when there's a lie there, even though they don't know what the lie is. That's what Thetans are best at,
mm,
is spotting this. This is knowingness, which is not subjective or objective. You just know, whether it's subjective, objective, or both. And the thing is
So
on the,
you're saying knowingness surpasses subjective reality.
yes, I know that for a fact, being OT8.
So do you think then subjective reality is an alter is of objective reality?
Well, subjective reality is to the degree that you are aware of it. Objective reality is to the degree that you are aware of it. Like, for example, our objective reality is that our periodic table consists of all of the different elements that are on the periodic table. Recently, they have found that there are other elements that they could create one super tiny little thing of, like element 115, which is what is used by some off-world societies to get from point A to point B faster than light.
But wouldn't all of that be both objective reality because you haven't experienced it yourself, you've only read about it?
One could argue that, and I'm not opposed to that, but I'm just using that as an analog, that we say that anything that exists is only that which we can see. That's what objective reality on planet Earth, non-scientologically, is if I can't see it and I can't poke it and it's not provable that way, it doesn't exist. If that was the case, the OT levels would not work. Period.
I've got a question for you guys. Now, I'm sure between all three of us, we can agree we've had knowingness on our journey, like
Sure.
something that you just know is complete truth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me ask you this. When it comes to expressing that knowingness, can you?
Well,
What do you mean?
therein lies the rub, that LRH had to come up with all kinds of words that didn't exist in the English language to describe things,
Yeah.
because nobody
So
was able to describe them beforehand.
that's right. So what I mean, Lisa, is like, when a bombshell drops inside of you so strong,
Mm-hmm.
and you're in complete alignment with something that just makes complete sense, and then you try and explain it to someone, and you just can't. Like, there's no words to explain that something.
Mm-hmm.
It's wordless, it's perspectiveless, it's, you do your best. Like, I'm trying to do my best to express
Right.
express it right now.
Right.
But it's just a knowing that words cannot compute the complete understanding of what you've just found to know.
We did a podcast on that too, having to do with
Is
symbols.
that all right?
Yeah.
That made
yeah.
sense, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, I mean, I've had realizations in session that were just, mind blowing. And I've tried to write like a blog post on it, or I've created a video. And obviously, it was okay and stuff, but I realized very quickly that my subjective reality on it was vastly different from another's or others. So
Hmm. Yep.
absolutely, I think in that way it definitely can be difficult, to use words to try and like make people understand. But yeah, it hasn't always been effective, because if it was, I think this world might be actually a better place. Well, it would be, because then we'd be able to duplicate better, and it would be like, okay, if
Yeah.
if this is the way, then yeah. But of course that isn't always the case.
Well,
Like I
basically
wonder
what.
what
Go ahead.
I wonder what true duplication would look like without language.
Well, then you would have possibly the theta universe, which is where I was headed. Is
Mm,
how do you describe a universe with components of the universe you're in when it's a different universe entirely that doesn't consist of anything the universe that you're currently in. It's just goes to no. And OW is the closest
yeah.
way, which is what you guys are describing. And that's part of what as is and this is like when you Scientology girl, when you have a win, or Arthur, you have a win or something, somebody says, so tell me your win. And you go,
Mm.
and because you
You know
as
you did.
you did,
Mm.
Yeah.
but whatever it was is gone.
Yeah.
And all of our listeners who are
Yeah.
Scientologists who've got auditing and everything, myself included, uh, and because
Yeah.
it's not part of the
Yeah.
physical universe anymore. Therein describes that particular thing, that it is not of this universe. It is something else. That is primarily you.
So if Scientology is knowing how to know,
Mhm.
and we're studying that, are we technically trying to then get out of the physical universe?
Well, we're one, trying to make people aware of it. Two, make up their own mind as to what they want to do with it. And like Hubbard says in the axioms, there are universes.
Yeah, but like you just said, you said pretty much when you know something,
Mm-hmm.
when you have a realization, it's not part of this universe.
That's right.
Right.
So you're recovering.
So the more you know, the less you're part of the physical universe.
That's right. And to that degree, the downside of it, and I was just mentioning this to one of our public that's getting auditing, the downside of it is that the further you go, the less you feel that you have comrades who
Mm,
duplicate where you're at. And that's why LRH says that OTs work best in groups of 7 or 8, because they have a similar reality that they share. And it's extremely difficult to reside as one Thetan who is OT and do well, because they don't have any, they don't feel duplicated. They have to come down the tone scale. And that's the liability of us. Okay, you can get a guy there, but keeping him there, he needs to be around other like quote unquote like-minded individuals to have a similar reality and be duplicated, because 7 or 8 OTs can go out and change anything they want and make anything happen if they really want to. But
mm,
you run into a lot of opposition where you're the only one. You can get a lot more done, but eventually you're going to fall down the tone scale.
I mean, honestly, when you really think,
so
sorry, Arthur, just real quick, when you really think
yeah.
about having us all uh, in this universe is kind of cruel, in that we're all searching for duplication, right? Because that's what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
We're communicating and stuff like
It's a
that,
it's a it's a
and
it's a
and
it's a
and we're technically eating ourselves up.
yeah.
I mean, think about all the relationships that we have where we're just can't, second dynamically, or in, a work dynamic and all of that. Like how much we're trying to duplicate, and have the desire to,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't, it honestly always fall short of your expectation when you really think about it.
Well, your idea in your head is always different than what really comes to pass, you know.
Like, even when we're talking, for example, I'm pretty sure like there are days when you are so enthusiastic about some sci-fi thing, and I'm just like, okay, this again. Or maybe I'm like, yeah, that's great, but it's not, yeah, that's great. So it, it's
Aren't you duplicating, Lisa?
well, basically, yeah.
Arthur,
But literally,
So,
like,
question. Yep. Sorry,
go
go,
ahead.
go. So, is duplication good or bad?
Duplication's fine, but the desire for me isn't good.
Well, is it? Because if we're duplicating ideas and concepts, which are people's perspectives and perceptions on things, right? And we're duplicating them, yeah. So, is duplication? I mean, right. So, if I go science,
This is a
duplication of
flow
cells is
thing.
necessary, right? But duplication as a concept that is not a real messed thing, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? So we're trying to duplicate tech and we're discussing tech. So is it good or is it bad?
I think if you are curious about duplication, if you are trying to duplicate something for yourself, I don't think there's, I mean, we could actually look and break it down, and it'll probably end up being like, no, it's bad. But
Yeah.
for the sake of this argument, if you're looking at in that way, the flow you to, or rather other things to you, it's
flow one.
yeah, it's not as bad as the desire to
You to others, flow two.
yeah, like if you want others to duplicate you, it's probably not going to happen. However, you as an infinitely capable being can duplicate something else should you choose to. It's never going to be 100%.
Right. Well,
Which comes from somewhere. Yeah. Like to duplicate something, it's got to come from somewhere. So there needs to be a seed of
An external
creation in order for it to duplicate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But this is also going back to the Tao that I read earlier on.
I'm
that
duplicating?
Well, hold on.
I'm teasing.
Okay.
I'm teasing.
So this goes back to the Tao, where you're also then sacrificing pretty much your knowingness, which is the Tao, the way, for a duplication of something that somebody else is trying to give you, or that you've seen, or something else. So in that sense, yes, it is kind of bad. If you look at the regression of society and stuff, I would say that it is bad.
Right. Now hold on us to your hats, Arthur. I'm really interested to see what happens here. You know, you're always talking about playing games in the physical universe and all that stuff. And, do you want to come back and do you want to play this game? Why play this game?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a Thetan has to agree to become aberrated in order to play a game. That's part of the axioms, which is exactly what you just told me.
Absolutely. That is it.
And that's part of the Scientology, Dianetic axioms. Okay. So therein lies the rub of the whole thing is that there has to be agreement to misduplicate in order to play a game. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. And then I think he wrote somewhere, I wish I could remember, it could have been Science of Survival, where he basically said that the games are all good and fine, but the fact is we haven't learned how to stop the game.
Well, at least in the physical universe, which is objective, and then subjective, and then there's just plain old knowingness. But if you look at just ultimate knowingness, maybe not absolute. I mean, if it's absolute knowingness and absolutes were obtainable, all right.
I don't think we'd be in this room.
Game over.
Yeah.
No pun intended. Game over. And that's the whole thing, is that you don't know what the other move is going to be, because if you're playing checkers by yourself, it's no fun. So you decide, I'm not going to duplicate entirely. But on the other side, you're always trying to be duplicated. I ask you, you ask me, do you feel duplicated?
Mm-hmm. I mean, think of how much would not matter if there were no other people around.
Right. You go live on a mountaintop in a cabin somewhere, and you don't have to put up with other people misduplicating or duplicating you at all.
The need for name brands is gone because ego. The need for, flashy cars and stuff doesn't matter anymore. I mean, sure, there might be elements of fun and stuff like that, but ultimately, if you were all alone and you had nobody to duplicate you, sure, you might go a bit crazy because we are so used to that human bond.
Right.
But it would solve a lot of problems, quite honestly.
Right. Well, every object that people try to sell you is like basically, hey, you want a different game? Here's a game you can play. The new iPhone 16 with a special button that allows you to snap a picture with the button on the camera instead of on the screen. They literally did this yesterday.
Yeah.
This is the new game. This new game, that new game, so on and so forth. New game, new game, new game, new product, new product, new product. No duplication. Duplicate our game.
Mm.
So it's a situation of misduplicating because you want to play a game. You agree to become aberrated. You agree to misduplicate. That's all it comes down to. Because if you're living in the cabin in the mountains, you could care less about the new iPhone.
Do you think we can? Do you think we could disagree with it? Like if the agreement is there and we've agreed to play, is there a way to actually like be like, okay, you know what? I've had enough of this. I'm out.
Sure.
I mean, and I understand that's kind of a little bit nihilistic, but if you look at the big picture,
sure, but you're not going to be duplicated anymore by anything, and you're going to crave duplication.
The lie.
Well, duplication is understanding, which is affinity, reality, and communication.
So it's understanding, but it's not no.
No, well, right, but ARC and you have to be present for knowledge, responsibility, and control equals power.
Yeah, but knowledge isn't no.
No.
And that's all these sure concepts. No, it's not.
Knowledge and no aren't the same thing?
No, I don't think so.
Arthur, jump in anytime here.
Because knowledge is things you learn.
But don't you know them?
No, you don't innately know them. And I think LRH goes as far as to say knowledge isn't knowing. So knowledge is everything you accrue that gives you general knowledge, I guess. It tells you what you should know, like ABCs, 1, 2, 3, all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Knowingness is innate. It's something that you can't.
I don't feel duplicated.
Neither do I, Bubbles. I think Arthur's been trying to speak, but I don't think he's coming through.
No, that's all right. I've been having a little side discussion. I was a little distracted. I'm sorry, but I'm listening.
Well, look. Hold on. You know what? Let's actually pull the dictionary up. Let's take a page from Arthur's book here. Knowledge. Facts, information, and skills acquired through experience or education. The theoretical or practical understanding of a subject. Awareness or familiarity gained by experience of a fact or situation. So knowledge is something external. You can say knowledge is accrued through objective reality understanding. You know what dogs are. You know what, it's all this physical universe stuff. Mm-hmm. But then when you get to knowingness is this. It's an innate ability. It's just Mm-hmm. I mean, here's the thing: we would technically, even if a dog wasn't told to us, we would know what a dog was because we would have this all-knowingness thing. It's just that in order to play a game, we've agreed to become aberrated and forget all of these things that we already know. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So, knowingness, Dianetics and Scientology Technical Dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
Being certainness, number
Yeah.
1. 2, a capability for truth is not data.
Exactly.
3, knowingness would be self-determined knowledge. Now,
Yeah, self-determined knowledge. You can say you can't say knowingness is knowledge. You can say knowingness is self-determined knowledge.
okay, now knowledge, next definition right below it. Knowledge. 1, by knowledge we mean assured belief. That which is known, information, instruction, enlightenment, learning, practical skill. By knowledge, we mean data, factors, and whatever can be thought about or perceived. From Fundamentals of Thought, page 76.
Okay, but you yourself said earlier on that perception and knowingness, if you're a thetan, like, I'm sorry, just carry on.
No, you're fine.
So,
2,
so at that point, with those
Yep.
definitions, that's when it can become,
Tricky.
it can become duplicable. God, what's
duplicatable.
then you can duplicate it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
duplicatable. That's what I meant to say.
Right. He says, number 2, knowledge is more than data. It is also the ability to draw conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's from Dianetic Auditor's Bulletin, Volume 2, page 69. 3, a whole group or subdivision of a group of data or speculations or conclusions on data or methods of gaining data.
Mm.
So pretty much,
So
if you
learning
look
how
at
to know.
those, if you look at those, Scientology is knowledge, but we still all have our innate knowingness. So they are technically two different things. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Well, isn't the idea to tap into, to know how to tap into that knowingness?
Well, there are not a whole lot of different that's what I'm looking for. There aren't a whole lot of definitions here. Okay. There's knowing cause, know to mystery scale, and then you have the KRC triangle. He says on the KRC triangle, the upper triangle in the Scientology symbol, the points are K for knowledge, R responsibility, and C for control. It is difficult to be responsible for something or control something unless you have knowledge of it. It is folly to try to control something or even know something without responsibility. It's hard to fully know something or be responsible for something over which you have no control. Otherwise, the result can be an overwhelm. Little by little, one can make anything go right by increasing knowledge on all dynamics, increasing responsibility on all dynamics, increasing control on all dynamics. HCOPL, 18 February 1972.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
My only thing that I was disagreeing with is that knowledge and know is the same thing.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be right or be wrong or anything. We're just discussing this, and then
I can't even remember the
Yeah.
point, to be honest.
Well, it's duplication is well, if you can duplicate somebody to the degree that you are certain you know, understand, have affinity, reality, communication for KRC, knowledge, responsibility, and control. Because if you don't know something, if you don't know how to handle a knife, you're going to get cut.
I mean, but that's the thing, though. There's no and then there's no. You know.
Well, that's
Well,
and that's
could
exactly
it be
right.
Could it be a little bit of a recipe as well? Because, like, we all have that inner knowing or that inner know, KNOW. But then, coming into these bodies, we can get so aberrated, and then we need the recipe of knowledge to return us back to that know, hopefully in this messed body, before we go back to know outside of this body.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And so knowledge is the path to return home, so to speak.
Well, I mean, on the one hand, that I would have in
That's
the
a tough
past
one.
agreed with that, but if you look at the fact that we're agreeing to be aberrated, right? I mean, there is no clause to how aberrated we can be, but ultimately, we are, at least in Scientology's terms, we are digressing as a society. We're sublimating knowingness for other things, morals and ethics and stuff, and you need that, and then those become enforced, and if you don't duplicate that, you fall further and further down the scale. So I'm not sure if it would work that way, Arthur.
He's thinking.
I'm computing. Yeah. All right. I've heard this before. You're wrong. There's so many ways you can look at this. Hey, yeah, it took me a while to sort of click onto it, but great topic, really good topic.
Yeah, there's a lot to duplicate here. There's a lot of things that have to be duplicated in order to duplicate. It's not as easy as it looks at first blush to go, oh. And so, if you tell somebody you're an independent Scientologist and they don't duplicate, they're like, what do you see in that? Just like I might say to a Catholic, what do you see in that?
Yeah. And, I mean, eventually 5 years down the line, I could be listening to this podcast and be like, what the fuck was I on? What was I thinking?
Yeah.
Arthur was totally right.
Right. Well,
the amount of arrogance I had back then. Jesus.
Ellerate says, viewpoints of dimension.
I think Arthur blew down on that.
and anchor points and all that. Yeah. So
damn, I could
do
talk
we
about
duplicate
this.
each other?
I could talk about this for hours. It's quite fun. It's really
I know. When I said let's do one on duplication, both of you guys are like,
yeah.
I was like, clearly they don't duplicate.
So many things you can actually think of with duplication. We should actually do a podcast on all of these little words, these
yeah, because there's a lot. I mean, people.
Yeah, they're big topics.
Yeah.
A lot of these words are massive topics.
Yeah, you just have to look at it and go, okay, let's get under the hood on that one.
Yeah.
And then, wow, this opens up Pandora's box. We could go on forever.
Yeah.
So, well, I hope our listeners have at least duplicated something about duplication on this. And that there has been no misduplication, and we would like you to comment on YouTube and give us your input on it. And if you have some other word or concept you'd like us to cover and talk about and unpack, as Quentin Stroud would say, we will unpack them, because there's a lot to independent Scientology and Dianetics. They're very deep subjects and a lot of fun to talk about. And I'm sure people will enjoy this because it's a lot of food for thought. I know I'm going to be thinking about it all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
this might end in a divorce though.
You're just not duplicating me. Not duplicating me.
So just so you know, Lisa, divorce is a duplicating idea.
Yeah.
That's true.
So for Arthur and Scientology Girl, we hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you in our next podcast the next day or two. Any closing comments from either one? Okay.
Just be careful what you duplicate.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And don't desire as much to have others duplicate you.
Right.
You can desire to duplicate.
Reality is all relative to that which you perceive or you do not.
Yep.
Namaste, and we love you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.